Hola y buenos días. Yo soy el señor Morris, el maestro de español. Bienvenidos sean todos. Welcome to everyone. Today, we'll go over all of the things that we've been talking about, measurement and school and all that, and then talk about how many people work in your school. But before we begin, let's go ahead and sing our greeting song. Canten conmigo. Hola, buenos días. ¿Cómo están ustedes? ¿Cómo se sienten? Yo me siento bien. Muy bien cantado. Now, we've been studying a couple of things in this unit. One of them is measuring, and I'd like to review that quickly. We start off with this. When we talk about pesar, we're talking about doing this. What is this called in English? Pesar. What is this guy? What are we doing to this guy? Weighing. That's right. Weighing. And what units do we use to weigh things in the metric system? Here's one. Estos son gramos. Gramos. Este es un gramo. Yeah, that's just 1 gram. And we use that for weighing light things, right? For heavy things, we use kilogramos. And that's 1 kilogramo, right? Well, how about this? Medir. In Spanish, we say we're going to medir. What is it in English? What is it in English? Do you remember? Measuring. That's right, measuring. To medir, we say that we use 3 units of measure. Okay? We use centímetros. And they're about as wide as your finger. You see that? Centímetros, they're about that wide. Okay, we use those to measure things that aren't too big, like pencils and people and books and things like that. Well, we use metros to measure bigger things. And metro is about, it's probably about as far as you can get your arms apart. If you want to, you can get a meter stick and hold your hands on either side of it and see how big it is to you. We use metros to measure bigger things like elephants and soccer fields and things like that. And finally, we said that we use kilometros to measure great distances, like from one city to another, right? Those are kilometros. Muy bien. I just wanted to look at that again to keep it fresh in your memory. Now, last class, we looked at this question. ¿Cuántas materias llevas? And remember, that was how many subjects do you take or do you carry? And we talked about your answers. You counted up. Do you remember all that? You remember your answers? Yeah. ¿Cuántas materias llevas? And you told me how many you counted them up, listed them down. Well, even in the most rigorous of schools, it would surprise me if your answer exceeded 10, if you take 10 subjects. But what if I ask you a question that requires a number that is larger than any of the numbers that we've learned so far? What will you do? Well, fortunately for us, the numbers in Spanish go higher than 10 or 20 or even 30. Let's go ahead and review the numbers that we've covered so far and then look at the numbers all the way up to 100. Okay, let's go ahead and start off with reviewing the digits here. Repitan todos. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, now these are the basis of everything, so it's really important that you guys know these really well because we're going to be referring to these again later. But let's go ahead and continue now with our teens, okay? Now, we talked about 10. Now, these numbers here that we would have as teens, 13, 14, 15. Okay, in Spanish, they start with 11, go through 15, and they all end with se. So, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, if you notice, a lot of these are related to the digits again. This is dos, so this becomes doce. Okay, and this one is tres, this becomes trece. Cuatro becomes catorce. And cinco, quince. So there's a relationship between the name of the digits and the name of the teens here. And then after that, again, we just go with our system of naming the number of tens, diez, and the number of units, seis. Diez y seis. Diez y siete. Diez y ocho. Diez y nueve. Right? And then when we moved into the next group of tens, veinte, we continue with our system, veinte y uno. Veinte y dos. Veinte y tres. 20 y 4. And we continue on through 29, 29, until we get to 30. Okay, now we've learned 10, 20, 30, but let's go ahead and look at all of the values of tens now. Okay, here we go. 10, 20, 30, repeat, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Now, you remember I said it was important to remember the numbers of the digits or the units, okay? Because these are related. Tres becomes 30, okay? Cuatro becomes 40. Can you see the relationship here between the names of the digits and the names of the 10? And do you see what all of the 10s end with? NTE, NTA, ENTA, ENTA, up here, ENTA, 70, 80, 90. So they all end with that ENTA sound, except for 10 and 20. Okay? But now if we have cinco, that becomes cinco. Okay, cinco, 50. Seis becomes 60. And I hope you guys are getting these down in your notes, okay? Siete becomes 70. Okay? Ocho, 80. And nueve becomes 90. And after we get to 90, 91, 92, you just keep with the same system until you come to 100. 100. Now remember earlier when we were talking about using the metric system, if you look at the word centímetro, centímetro, you see the first part of that word right over here. Centímetro. It looks like the Spanish word for 100, cien. You see that? So, now, how many centímetros are there in a metro? Think about it. Centímetros in a metro. Can you figure that out? There are 100 or 100. Remember when we looked at the meter stick, we could figure that out. 100 centímetros in 1 metro. And you'll see this same prefix on the word centipede. Centipede. Okay? So, how many legs would you suppose that a centipede has? A centipede has how many legs? 100. So you see the Spanish plays over into the English some. Well, how many pennies are there in a dollar? How many pennies are there in a dollar? There are 100, right? Have you ever heard of a penny being called a cent? Yeah, cent. And that comes from the same as the Spanish word for cien, or 100. There are 100 cents in a dollar. And if you look through English, you'll probably find a lot of cases of this prefix or this word appearing, like a century is 100 years. Okay, so if you think about it, the Spanish and the English have a lot of relationships, and that's just one of them right there. Well, I tell you what, right now, I'd like for you all to review the numbers once again with this video. So presten atención y repitan todos.
Los números. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100.
Well, now that we know some larger numbers, I want to ask you a question that might require a larger number as a response. And the question is, ¿cuántas personas trabajan en tu escuela? Let's look at this question and see if we can figure out what it's asking, okay? ¿Cuántas is the question word that we've been asking about how many. So ¿cuántas means how many. En tu escuela, right down there at the end. En tu escuela means in your school. Trabajan. Remember that? We said that means work. Well, personas, we've talked about that. That's a cognate, which means persons or people. So the question is asking, ¿cuántas, how many people work in your school? Okay, can you figure that out? Well, I tell you what, to answer that question, we'll count up the number and put it into this form. We'll say, blank personas trabajan en mi escuela. So we'll say the number right there, the number of people, personas. So we'll say this many personas trabajan en mi escuela. Okay, do you see how that works? It kind of makes sense after you do it for a little while. But we still need to know the number of people. So that's why we have our handy-dandy activity sheet for today called ¿Cuántas personas trabajan en tu escuela? Yeah. Well, let's see. Start off up here with your name. Voy a escribir mi nombre. Roberto. Now, the directions say fill in the blanks with the appropriate number of people for your school and then add up all the numbers to answer the last question. Now, if you work in a big school, this might help And if you work in a small school, you might be able to count up all the people in one hand. But let's start with this. ¿Cuántos maestros trabajan en tu escuela? And now when we talked about hermanos and abuelos, remember that the OS form can mean both men and women. So how many teachers work in your school? Count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count up however many there are and write the number here. And you might say that there are, oh, I don't know, maybe there are 20. If there are 20 maestros who work in your school, go ahead and put that there. And then you can write the number over here. And then, ¿cuántos ayudantes trabajan en tu escuela? How many helpers? ¿Cuántos porteros? And here we see the porteros. Cocineros. Bibliotecarios. Directores. Secretarias. Okay, so you're going to write all of your answers over here along the side. And then, once you get down here, you'll add all of these up to answer the question, ¿Cuántas personas trabajan en mi escuela? You'll write that down there. And now down here at the bottom, I've included this key that has all of the numbers that we've studied now up to 100. So hopefully you'll be able to use those in answering your question. And those also might be able to help you in filling out your notes today when we were talking about the numbers. Okay? Well, I tell you what. Do you think that schools are the same in Spanish-speaking countries as they are in the United States of America? Do you think so? What do you think is the same? What do you think is different? Well, I can tell you from what I've seen that they study a lot of the same subjects. They study science and math. They study geography, and they study language. They study their own language, Spanish, and a lot of times they study English, just like we do. Okay? Kids like to play together and have friends. They're the same that way. Some ways they're different. In some of the schools that I've seen, in many schools, they don't have cafeterias and they don't get to eat at their schools. Schools may start a little bit later. Schools may end a little bit later or a little bit earlier. Sometimes they only have a half day of school because they have students who come in the morning and students who come in the afternoon. Okay? Also, in the schools that I've seen where I live down in Paraguay, the students themselves would clean the school. They'd sweep and clean the schools and wipe the boards and everything themselves. So that's probably a little bit different from the school that you go to. What you can do is you can look for books in your library or in your city library that talks about other countries and maybe find out something about the schools in other countries. You can visit the internet if you have access to your computer and find out about schools in other places. I think it's really interesting to see what those students think and do. Okay. Today, we reviewed the metric system. We reviewed some of the questions about the subjects that you study in school and the people who work in your school. Next lesson, we'll review all of the things that we've been studying in this unit in preparation for our unit evaluation. Okay? We'll be playing lotería, so you may want to get your lotería boards ready. Pues, es hora de despedirnos. For our goodbye song today, let's sing the song that we sang at the beginning of this unit, called El Rancho Grande. Canten conmigo. And remember, this is the one where you can go, aha! This is a ranchero. Here you go. Allá en el rancho grande, allá donde vivía. ¡Ajá! Había una rancherita que alegre me decía, que alegre me decía. You can do, ajá. Te voy a hacer tus calzones como los que usa ranchero. Te los comienzo de lana, te los acabo de cuero. Good job. I'll see you guys next class. Until then, adios.